Hello and welcome to the Raisina Ideas Pod. I'm Mihir Sharma from the Observer Research Foundation and the Project for Nordic-India Relations. And I'm very happy to be here with Mr. Rasmussen, who is the Foreign Minister of Denmark. Thank you, sir, for coming here, and thank you for coming jointly with your 7 other colleagues from the Nordic-Baltic countries in a show of interest in Raisina and the India partnership. Denmark matters to India a great deal because although it may be a relatively small economy, it is in fact a great maritime nation. And it has a very large presence on the high seas. And for us in India, many of the concerns economically and politically in the recent past have centered around security in the Red Sea. And the security of shipping, and much of our shipping, including to Europe and the European Union, goes through the Red Sea. Could you give us a sense of the importance of securing these maritime routes, what your view on it is, and what you feel India's contribution as a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific should be?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's so nice to be back at the Raisina. I participated last year as well. And I'm especially proud that we have brought this Danish-Indian relationship forward. I remember my first visit as Prime Minister a couple of years ago. We hadn't anything like this relation we have now. So I'm proud, and I hope we can discuss that as well, because we have made concrete progress today. But answering your question, I mean, as you rightly said, we are a small country, but we are a big maritime nation. So the freedom of navigation is a basic right. And what's happening in the Red Sea and the Suez Channel these days is a danger to the world community, the world trade, the supply chains. It could have a huge impact on economic growth. So we need countries to stand up for these fundamental rights. And we have done that in Denmark. We participated in the Operation Prosperity Guardian. We have pushed very hard to create this new European Union mission to the region as well. And we even also, with a Danish officer, participated in the more offensive American-led operation against the Houthis' capacity. And I really want to commend India for participating, not as a part of this operation, but side by side and in close coordination, having decided to send, from what I remember or recall by heart, 12 naval ships to the region. That is very recommendable, especially because too many countries are, hiding a bit. All countries in the world should stand up for these basic rights. And I'm aware, when I talk privately to colleagues around the world, that the numbers of countries supporting these different operations are far, far larger than those who are standing up. So India, as the world's biggest democracy and a bridge builder in the global society, participating in this is something you couldn't overestimate the importance of.
Thank you. And I think that that's a very persuasive argument for increasing our role. I want to sort of switch maybe to an India and Denmark focused question and maybe expand the scope of it. You mentioned that there have been steps forward taken in the relationship. Could you tell us a little bit about what the people-to-people future, the relationship between our peoples looks like? And I will have a follow-up to that later.
Yes. Well, a few years ago, we took our relationship to the next level by agreeing on this green strategic partnership. Just yesterday, I witnessed the signing of 4 concrete contracts between Danish and Indian authorities and companies. There's a growing interest among the Danish business environment to invest in India. We have around 166 Danish companies present in India. They employ around 100,000 people. 1/3 of them have concrete plans for further investments. And that's why we need to create an even better framework for our cooperation. When I visited India less than a year ago, I was faced by a problem linked to a business visa. Too much bureaucracy, you could say, a lot of red tape. And within a year, we have changed that red tape to red carpet. We have changed the regulation domestically in Denmark, so we have now more flexible regulation. We are also staffed up at our embassy, and we have brought, waiting list down to a very efficient procedure, which will take not more than 2 weeks. And that's a very concrete outcome of this engagement, because if we want to have a closer contact, I mean, it is not enough with a lot of buzzwords and speeches and broad agreements. We should deliver as well. And we have done that. And today, in the meeting with my Indian colleague, we signed up a migration and mobility agreement, which will create a much more predictable framework for Indians who wants to come to Denmark in order to work or study. And we will give, for instance, Indian students in Denmark an advantage in comparison with students from other countries abroad. And I'm pleased to say that at the meeting today, I also discussed with my colleague that we should take this another step forward, because one thing is to have a broad agreement which allow Indians to knock at our door. The open question is how many will do so. I mean, there's a language issue. There are many issues. So one thing we discussed today, among other things, is to work on a pilot project where we set up close cooperation between existing Indian nursing school training facility and a counterpart in Denmark, enable Indian nursing students to study on a special, you could call it Danish track, where they, in addition to the professional skills, also will have be taught in
exposure to the culture and language.
Culture and language, yeah, and with a clear promise that if you graduate, you are welcome in Denmark. There will be a job offer for you in Denmark.
So, can you tell us how this fits into your larger vision for migration and mobility for your country and for Europe in general? It is a divisive political issue, but you clearly have found what is, in your opinion, one possible solution. Do you feel that there are elements to this that need to be replicated elsewhere? Of course, as advice, what would you give?
But that's exactly the point. I mean, because we have had in Denmark, as in other European countries, this ongoing discussion of how open should we be towards foreign labours. And it's not a secret that we have also faced some kind of integration problems which have had a negative impact on our society. I think Denmark, better than many other European countries, have managed that.
Started earlier also.
We started earlier, and I think we had perhaps a bit more realistic approach, realizing that we need open borders for some, but not open borders for everybody. And this is a very concrete approach. We know that the Indian diaspora environment in Denmark creates absolutely no problem. Indians in Denmark are hardworking, and they have, good positions in our healthcare industry, in our tech industry, etc. So it makes sense to enhance that kind of cooperation with a country whom we know will not create any problems, and where we can gain. It's a win-win situation, instead of continuously discussing more broadly whether the general regulation should be tougher or softer. So I think this very concrete approach also brings the Danish political environment together. Those who are perhaps a bit more, I wouldn't say frightened, but not as open for this influx compared to me, because we conduct it in a very concrete manner.
Understood. You mentioned the Green Strategic Partnership. So I want to talk about another way in which maybe you have, in Denmark, been a leader in setting certain templates. What is the way in which, in your opinion, the green part of it impacts the strategic part and vice versa? How do they interact?
In many ways. I mean, it's quite obvious, and if it wasn't obvious before, it became obvious when Putin made this illegal war of aggression in Ukraine, that energy policy is also security policy.
Exactly.
And I think perhaps we have had, by coincidence, a kind of advantage, because back in the 70s, we were totally dependent on fossil fuels from OPEC, and we had the crisis. and it created huge unemployment and inflation in Denmark. And we took the medicine prescribed those days and started this trend of renewable energy, which have given us a kind of stronghold and competitive advantage, which we now can offer. Because, I mean, all countries in the world, whoever they are located, shouldn't be too dependent on one particular supplier. And that goes in all sectors, whether it's energy or medicine or tech or whatever. So bringing Danish skills to India and scaling them up is for the benefit of Denmark and our economy, but also for the benefit of the Indian economy. But it's also a stepping stone to be less dependent and de-risking your society and your economy.
Wonderful. As we move towards the end of this podcast, I just want to also ask you maybe a question about Europe and Europe in two dimensions. Where do you see the future of the European Union in terms of being able to develop a unified strategic vision, particularly towards the East? And do we still continue to see a united Europe in terms of values when it is under pressure, let us say, by multiple different forces and internal cohesion, questions about internal cohesion, as well as external attempts to meddle?
That's quite a question, isn't it?
No, well, I'm giving you 2 minutes.
Yeah. But I think actually Europe has surprised in a positive way during the last 2 years. I think when Putin decided to make this attack on Ukraine, he didn't thought for a second that he would be met by such an Ukrainian resistance, and he didn't thought that Europe actually managed to stay together, which we have. I mean, we have increased our support to Ukraine. We have accepted Finland and Sweden as members of the NATO. North of NATO. We have opened the door and started negotiations about Ukraine joining Europe. It's quite the opposite.
I think he underestimated the shock that people would feel at a 20th century war emerging in 21st century.
And the readiness to act on it. Yeah. Because you could also, face a shock and then, be so...
Europe has not generally been assumed to be the location that gets its act together in a moment of strategic...
But that's exactly what happened. And now we are facing the 2 years date for the invasion. We just passed this special Ukraine facility. As we speak, Denmark signed up a security commitment agreement with Ukraine today. Yeah. So in that sense, I'm optimistic. But I mean, also to answer your question in a serious and serious way, an honest way, I also think Europe must realize a new geopolitical situation. I mean, when I was born, I think Europe accounted for like 30% of the global economy. Now it's down to 16%. In 30 years' time, it will be down to 12%. So we are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And we should be aware of that, because if we want to play a role in world society, we should speak up with one voice. We should act more coordinated. Otherwise, we will be easy to you'll
be steamrolled over.
We will, so that is something we must take very seriously. Also, bearing in mind the ongoing conflict, for instance, Israel-Gaza. I am working very, very hard to create a common European position. We are the biggest donor for the Palestinian society, the same Europe as a whole. Same goes in Africa. Europe is the biggest development contributor in Africa, but we are not seen like this because we act not as a union, but as 27 different countries with nuances. And if we speak with the same voices, at least speak from the same menus,
express the same values,
express the same values, then we could still play an important role. And that's why I'm very much in favor of these regional-based agreements. Of course, as a Danish minister, I love the special partnership with India. But it's even more important that we create a partnership between Europe as a whole and India, and broadly speaking, the whole ASEAN community.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Minister Rasmussen, for your work on this relationship and for coming twice to India in a year. And we hope to see you again at RISE, and I hope you enjoyed your time here.
I did. Thank you.
Thank you very much.